Are there any questions for Professor Helfand?
The tuition at Quest, is it higher or lower than Stanford or USC?
Oh, it's way lower. It is 30,000 Canadian dollars, which is about 24,000 US dollars.
Are you state subsidized?
We are completely free of any government money whatsoever. And 80% of our students are on financial aid, so they don't even pay that much money.
How are you getting your funding then?
We're very frugal. We have no administration except me.
That is fantastic. Oh my gosh.
We are $2,000 per student cheaper than the Canadian public university system, where the average class size is 391 students.
Oh wow. Yes.
Are you guys hiring?
As a matter of fact, yeah, we've got about 10 faculty positions to go, so watch the website, questu.ca. She had her hand up first.
Yeah.
You said the students ask a question and that's what they base the rest of their education on. What is an example of a question?
Oh, wonderful example. So some of them are very, very general. So they can be very general or very, very specific. So a very general example is, what is the best way to educate a child? So this student spent a month, 5 hours a day, 6 hours a day, 5 days a week in a second grade Montessori classroom, read Maria Montessori. Spent another month in a Waldorf classroom and read Rudolf Steiner. Spent another month in a public school second grade classroom, read John Dewey. Then compared and contrasted theory with practice, and then across practices. Right? So but it's a general question, but she really focused on, because she wants to do K through 6 education. Another question was much more specific. How do local cultural practices affect the delivery of public health services in developing countries? Right? This person sort of knew she wanted to be a social epidemiologist. So she started in a hazmat suit collecting Lyme disease ticks to understand vector-borne diseases, and took courses in biochemistry and epidemiology. She then went to Buenos Aires for 2 months and did a Spanish language immersion course. On the way back, stopped for 3 months in Central America, worked at 2 health clinics, one in a rural area, one in an urban area, to look at local cultural practices affecting the top-down delivery of public health in those countries, and took courses in cultural anthropology and things like that. And then her final project was wonderful. It was in the Bolivian Amazon, where there was an outbreak of hemorrhagic fever, not Ebola, but a related virus to Ebola. And it was killing people. And so the World Health Organization, helicopters and these doctors. And they quickly discovered the problem. The local shaman, for thousands of years, had cured fevers by rubbing these large, white, live rats on your naked skin. And she's got videos of them sort of rubbing your all over. The rats were the vectors of the hemorrhagic fever. So this local cultural norm was killing people systematically. And what she documented was the negotiation between the WHO doctors and the local shaman to change this cultural practice for a medical outcome. And she's now in a PhD program at the University of Washington in epidemiology. But one of them was like, we have this wonderful young woman from Kosovo, grew up through the war in the Balkans, right? And her question is, how do we induce happiness?
Wow. Did she get an answer to that one?
Well, she studied Bhutan with their gross domestic happiness instead of their gross domestic product. You know about Bhutan?
No. I mean, I know Bhutan, but I don't know they actually have a measurement
Yeah,
of
they have a GDH instead of a GDP, the gross domestic happiness, and that's what they try to maximize. And she did a lot of work in psychology and things like that. And she's now getting a master's in social work.
Yeah, there.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Happiness.
So that's really not anywhere near as silly as it sounds.
Pursuit of happiness. Right. Unfortunately, most people today think it guarantees happiness. And it doesn't. And there's a huge difference, right? It guarantees the pursuit of happiness.
Right.
How hard is it for Americans, kids out of high school to apply for that?
Our demographics are about 50% Canadian, about 35% US, and 15% from 41 other countries around the world. We are the only university in the world that gives exactly the same tuition, exactly the same fees, exactly the same scholarships, and exactly the same financial aid independent of country of origin. And so it's easy. In fact, this year, we're going to be close to 50% Americans in the incoming class this year.
Yeah.
What's your acceptance rate? And do you have any graduate programs?
No, because we decided to do one thing well. We not have certificates or diplomas or PhDs or law degrees or engineering degrees or any other kind of degrees. We have one degree, and it's the same for everybody because there's no majors. It's called a Bachelor of Arts and Sciences because everyone does both. and then the student's question is printed on their transcript. We have 950 applicants for 180 positions this year, so it's not crazy yet, although it's going up at 25% a year, so apply soon.
Yes.
Do you have dance in your curriculum?
We do. We have someone from Sri Lanka, actually, whose PhD is in dance studies. Most of the dance, though, is done. We have an artist in residence program. Another great virtue of the block is you can get people who actually are real-life practitioners to take 3 weeks out of their lives. You can't take people to get 4 months out of their lives. So we have a Canadian ambassador to Africa teach an international relations course, because after 30 years of being an ambassador, he can't take 4 months off to teach a class, but he can take 3.5 weeks off to teach a class. And so most of dance, theater, painting, sculpture, photography, is done by our artist in residence program. So every 6 weeks, a new artist in residence comes in and both teaches a course and then hangs out and helps people.
Do you grade, like normal grades?
Yeah, so, when we started, we're all hippies, right? So so we wanted not to give grades, but we figured we didn't have departments, and we don't have tenure either. That's another one. We don't have departments, we don't have tenure, we don't have majors, we don't have faculty ranks. We don't call ourselves professors, even though 100% of us have PhDs. We call ourselves tutors, because we teach, we don't profess. We better do something to make other universities take us seriously. And so we said we'd give grades. And we said we'd do it for 10 years, and then we'd be so famous we wouldn't have to give grades anymore. But I don't know if we'll make that. That's only 3 years away. But in the first course, we don't. We give a narrative evaluation. And in the other key courses, so we were founded by this geophysicist who was in charge of the moon rocks program. And the person that gave us the money to start this was the guy who discovered diamonds in Canada. So he's a geologist. So we have the cornerstone class and the touchstone readings and the keystone class, and we're thinking of calling the question class the kidney stone class, because it's really hard to pass.
He worked on that all day.
No, I got it from him, actually. Those key classes are narrative evaluations, and a student can ask for a narrative evaluation in any class and cover their grade, but they are given a grade. So unfortunately, yeah, we do grade. But no exams, or most classes don't have exams. It's based on written work, oral presentations. Every class you do 2 or 3 oral presentations, so you've done 100 by the time you graduate. So if they can't do anything else, they can sell used cars.
Do you find that there are individual students that don't somehow respond to this system as well, or?
Yeah, my favorite example. I fortunately blocked his name, because otherwise I would inadvertently use it. Really bright kid, came in, and we have a thing. See, we don't just use grades. So we use grades, and the first year we didn't think. And when you don't think, you do the usual thing. And when you do the usual thing, it's undoubtedly wrong. So we said, well, we're giving everybody all these scholarships, these $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 scholarships. They have to maintain a 3.2 average or something. We're taking away the scholarship. Immediately, we induced the sort of grade grubbing that we wanted to avoid, right? So at a student suggestion, we abolished that. So you don't have to maintain any grade point average to keep your scholarship now. But every time you get a grade, which is every month, because you finish a whole semester every month, underneath is a box, and it says, this student is contributing to and gaining from the intellectual environment in my classroom, yes or no. It's binary. And the minimum is that you get 6 out of 8 yeses. So this kid had a 3.7 average and got 2 out of 8 yeses.
Wow.
And we threw him out.
Wow.
I mean, he was totally hostile to the idea of collaboration. He was completely focused on answers rather than process. I mean, he was antithetical to our system. Very bright, and I'm sure he's doing well in some 300-student lecture hall somewhere in some big Canadian university, but not a good fit. So yes, there are some people who don't respond. And then it requires a certain level of engagement and self-discipline and time management, because it's pretty intense, right? You do it for 3.5 weeks. Then there is a break. So Wednesday at 5 o'clock to Sunday at 5 o'clock in the 4th week, no academic work can be done, because everything has to be in by 5 o'clock on Wednesday, and you can't assign work to the next day. You can sign it at 9 o'clock, at 5 o'clock at night, so they can do 5 hours of reading that night to get ready for Monday's class, but you can't do it before then. And so there's a real break every month. But yeah, there are some people that aren't up for it.
In the back row. So you, and then you. Go ahead. Yes.
With such a diverse student population in your campus, do you have student affairs professionals that support the students, increasing student retention, the mental health of college students?
Oh, yes, that's another whole subject. Yes, we do. We have a wonderful dean of students, and it's a fully residential campus, so people have to live on campus all 4 years. Faculty live in the residences, student life, professional in every residence. And so we do that. Our retention rate is around 90%. Most of the ones who leave, we ask to leave. Or the few that just know they're not fitting in. Yeah, we have the standard mental health issues, although since we have 700 students and 3 full-time counselors, the ratio is a little better than it is at most universities. There were 2 more over here.
Yeah,
forget who you called
I
us.
think.
So I was curious how this might relate to the Common Core shift that we're doing, because within elementary school students, I'm getting a lot of lectures there, and it seems like it aligns pretty much where education is trying to go. And I'm wondering if you could weigh in on that hot button educational issue.
Yeah, I think the Common Core is really a good idea. I think the implementation with the focus on standardized tests is a really terrible idea. That's what the subject of today's conference was at Pomona, actually, about how you get the standardized test out of schools so that individual schools and individual classrooms can have the autonomy they need to adapt to the learning styles of what they need. But having standards and having progressive standards like the Common Core has, I think is really very good. In Canada, in BC anyway, education in Canada, there's no Department of Education in Canada. Everything is provincial, K through PhD. There's no national accreditation system. It's all provincial. And the K through 12 system in BC is really trying to do some very creative things. And they're being completely stymied by the university system, who says, hey, our admissions criteria is 91.67, and if you're 91.66 on standardized tests, we don't take you, and if you're 91.68, we do, and you can't take away those tests because how would we know who to admit? And so I know the woman who's sitting between the Ministry of Education and Advanced Education trying to negotiate this. K through 12, they're ready to go. The universities are still in the 19th century.
I think our last question here.
I had 2 parts. One is, do you find it difficult from people from the United States or other countries going from a secondary education year, high school, making that transition to a block education? And is anywhere in the United States looking at this kind of curriculum for or setting up something similar?
Well, the block system in particular was pioneered by Colorado College in 1969. 1969, most of you aren't old enough, but anything was possible in 1969. I remember. And in 1969, the Colorado College faculty said, we're bored, and they threw out their entire curriculum and switched to the block. And precisely 2 places have followed since then, right? Because change is hard in higher education. And it's how students from anywhere in the world adjust to this, because clearly it's radically different. That's what the entire first 4 weeks is about. That first course, when we discuss what is knowledge from all these different disciplinary perspectives, it's mostly about how do you have a productive conversation around a table with 18 people? How do you have a productive conversation when the 4 of you are working in a little breakout room on a piece of an essay or a paper or something that we're working on? Where are your quantitative reasoning skills? Where are your writing skills? Where are your oral communication skills? So it's all about diagnostics and about training, basically, in workshops on time management and everything. They're sort of scheduled 24/7 for that first month to get them up to fit into the system that we've designed. Anyway.
Well, it's quite a lot to think about, and probably a big difference from what most of us experienced in college. And it sounds like not beyond a noble experiment, an incredibly successful experiment. And I hope that success will breed repetition and copying and some real change in higher education. With that, let me say thank you again once more to David to come share your experiences with us.